Malik stood at the school gate, holding his backpack tightly. His shoes were old, his shirt a little loose, and his eyes looked tired. He didn't like changing schools. This was his third school in 2 years. He didn't know anyone here, and he didn't want to talk. He just wanted to survive the day. As he stepped into the hallway, students rushed past him. Some were laughing, some shouting, some whispering secrets to their friends. Malik kept his head low. He didn't like attention. He was just a quiet boy who tried to stay invisible. When he entered his classroom, the teacher looked up. "You must be the new student," she said with a forced smile. Malik nodded slowly. "Come in. Find an empty seat." He quietly walked to the back of the room and sat near the window. A few students turned to look at him. Some smiled, others just stared. "What's your name?" a boy in front whispered. "Malik," he replied softly. "Where are you from?" Malik didn't answer. That was the first of many questions he would avoid. He didn't fit in over the next few days. Malik tried to adjust, but it wasn't easy. He didn't laugh at their jokes. He didn't talk about video games. He didn't even tell anyone where he lived. He just sat quietly, listened, and left when the bell rang. Some students began to notice. "Why don't you ever talk? Are you too good for us? You think you're better?" Malik kept his eyes down. Then the teasing started. They called him Ghost Boy, Mr. Secret, and even Pentagon Liar, but that came later. At first it was just whispers and giggles behind his back. Then it became louder. Phew. Students would bump into him by mistake. They would hide his notebook or erase his name from the whiteboard. Malik didn't complain. He just stayed quiet. The question that changed everything one Monday morning, the teacher came in with. A wide smile. "Today," she said, "we're going to do something fun." The class looked up. "I want each of you to tell us what your parents do for work. It's career day soon, and this will help us prepare." She pointed to the first student. "Sarah." "My mom's a doctor," Sarah said proudly. "Very good." "And you, Jason?" "My dad owns a car company." One by one, the students shared stories. Some bragged, some made jokes. The teacher clapped and smiled at each one. Then she looked at the back of the room. Malik froze. All eyes turned to him. The classroom felt hot. His heartbeat quickened. The teacher tilted her head. "What about you? What does your father do?" Malik looked down at his desk. His fingers trembled a little. He works at the Pentagon," he said softly. There was silence for a second. Then came the laughter. "The Pentagon?" One boy shouted. "Yeah, right. Is he the president too?" Another said. Some students slapped their desks. Others covered their mouths, trying not to laugh. The teacher didn't laugh out loud, but she smirked. "Malik," she said with a chuckle, "you don't have to make things up. Just tell us the truth." Malik looked up slowly. His eyes were full of confusion and pain. "I'm not lying," he whispered. More laughter. Someone shouted, "Then where's your private jet?" Even the students who weren't laughing now looked curious. Could it be true? Could this quiet boy, the boy with no fancy shoes, no stories, no friends, really have a father who worked at the Pentagon? The smirk that said everything the teacher walked to the front of the class. Her smile was gone. She folded her arms and looked at Malik. "I think we've had enough jokes for today," she said sharply. "I'm not joking," Malik repeated, this time louder. "Enough," the teacher said. "Let's move on." Malik lowered his head. His face burned with shame. He wanted to run out of the room. He wanted to scream, but he stayed silent. Like always, the rest of the class continued. The students gave more answers, some more believable, some not, but the room was no longer focused on them. The energy had shifted. Whispers started again. "He's lying. Maybe he's crazy. Poor kid thinks he's special." The teacher didn't say anything else about it, but her smirk had done enough damage. The boy behind the silence after class, Malik walked alone in the hallway, past the lockers, the posters, the trophy case. His head was full of noise, not from the hallway, but from his thoughts. Why don't they believe me? What did I do wrong? He remembered his father's words from many months ago. Some people won't understand. You. And that's okay. Your truth is enough. Malik wanted to believe those words. But in that classroom, they felt like a lie. The hidden photo that night, Malik sat on his bed.
His room was small, just a mattress, a shelf with a few books, and
A photo frame. He picked it up. It was a picture of him as a little boy sitting on his father's shoulders. His dad was wearing his military uniform. Strong, tall, proud, the uniform wore medals and badges. On the wall behind them, the Pentagon sealed Malik held the photo close. "Why don't they believe me, Dad?" he whispered. His mother knocked. On the door. "You okay, baby?" He quickly wiped his face. "I'm fine." She walked in and sat beside him. "You had a hard day?" He nodded. "Did they make fun of you again?" Another nod. She looked at the photo in his hands. Her eyes softened. "One day," she said, "they'll know who your father really is. They'll feel ashamed for how they treated you." The suspicion grows the next day at school. The whispers continued. "Did you hear what he said yesterday?" "Yeah, Pentagon. What a joke. I bet his dad's in jail." Malik ignored them. He sat in class, stared at the board, and said nothing. But inside, something had changed. He wasn't just sad now. He was angry. Angry that no one gave him a chance. Angry that his words were laughed at. Angry that even adults didn't believe him. Ending scene hook in suspense that Friday. As the final bell rang, the teacher looked at Malik again. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Malik, if your father really works at the Pentagon, maybe he can come visit us for career day next week." The class laughed again. Malik didn't respond. He picked up his bag and walked out of the classroom. But as he stepped into the hallway, he stopped. He pulled out his old photo from his backpack, looked at it, and put it back. A quiet voice echoed in his head. "One day, they'll see." He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just walked away, but with a different look in his eyes. A look that said, "This isn't over." The following Monday morning, Malik woke up early, sat on his bed, staring at the floor for a long time. His backpack was ready. His clothes were neat. But something inside him felt heavy, like a storm was building inside his chest. He didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to face the laughter again, but he had no choice. He stepped out of the house quietly. His mother gave him a kiss on the head and said, "Stay strong, Malik." He nodded, not because he felt strong, but because he wanted to be. A dangerous game as Malik entered the school building. A group of boys near the lockers noticed him. "Right away, there he is," one whispered, "the Pentagon Prince." Another said loudly. They laughed. Malik walked past them without saying a word. His face was calm, but his heart was pounding. He reached his classroom and sat in his usual seat at the back near the window. He kept his head down. The teacher entered a few minutes later, holding a stack of papers. "Good morning, everyone. Let's get started." But before she could begin, one of the boys raised his hand. "Yes, Troy." "Ma'am, I was just wondering, is Malik going to give us a tour of the Pentagon next week?" he said with a grin. The class burst into laughter. Even the teacher smiled a little before catching herself. "That's enough," she said, trying to look serious. "Let's focus on our lesson." Malik clenched his fists under the desk. He didn't say anything, but inside, he was starting to break. The photo incident later that day. During break time, Malik stayed in the classroom. He sat alone, flipping through his notebook. He had slipped the photo of his father inside, hoping it would give him courage. Two boys, Troy and Aaron, entered the classroom quietly. "What are you looking at?" Troy asked, walking closer. Malik quickly closed his notebook. "Nothing," he said. Aaron reached over and grabbed it from him. "Hey," Malik shouted, standing up, but it was too late. The photo slipped out and fell to the ground. Troy picked it up. "Who's this? Your dad?" He looked at the uniform in the photo and smirked. "Nice costume," Aaron said. Malik stepped forward and grabbed the photo back. "Give it back," he snapped. "Oh, he's angry now," Troy laughed. "Don't touch my stuff," Malik said, his voice shaking with rage. The teacher walked in just then. "What's going on here?" "Nothing, ma'am," Troy said quickly. "Just chatting." The teacher glanced at Malik. then the other boys. She didn't ask any more questions. A lesson in shame during the next class. The teacher brought up a new topic: trust and truthfulness. We all know it's important to be honest, she said. Lying can hurt others and damage your reputation. She looked around the class. Can anyone give an example of a lie they've heard recently? Troy raised his hand immediately. I know one, he said, glancing at Malik. Someone in this class told a big lie. The teacher paused. Her eyes shifted toward Malik. She didn't stop Troy. Troy smiled and continued. He said his dad works at the Pentagon. But he won't prove it. Doesn't that sound like a lie? Some students giggled. The teacher said, let's not name anyone. But yes, honesty matters. If you can't prove something, maybe you shouldn't say it. Malik felt like the whole class was closing in on him. Even the teacher was doubting him now. His face turned red. He wanted to speak, wanted to scream, but he couldn't. He stayed quiet. A voice that broke the silence after class. A girl named Maya approached him in the hallway. Hey, she said gently. Malik looked up. I believe you, she whispered. You don't seem like a liar. Malik didn't know what to say. No one had ever said that to him. Thanks, he whispered back. She smiled. Some people are just too blind to see the truth. After school shadows that afternoon, Malik walked home slower than usual. His backpack felt heavier. His steps dragged. He passed by the playground where other kids laughed and played. But not him. He hadn't smiled in days. When he reached home, his mother saw his tired face. Same story? She asked. He nodded. They laughed again. She sat beside him and held his hand. Do you want to call your father? She asked. He looked at her with hopeful eyes. Can I? She smiled. Of course. She dialed the number and handed him the phone. The call, hello? A deep voice answered. Dad, Malik. How's my little man? Not. Took a deep breath. They don't believe me, Dad. About you. There was a pause on the line. Who? Everyone. My teacher. The kids. They think I'm lying. His father's voice became serious. Did you tell them I work at the Pentagon? Yes, but they laughed. I see. Malik's voice broke. Can you come? Just once. Please. Another pause. I'll be there, his father said firmly. Tell your teacher I'll visit for career day. Malik smiled for the first time in days. Really? Really? No more hiding. They'll see. The whisper before the storm the next morning, Malik entered class quietly, but with something different in his eyes. A small spark. A quiet confidence. As he sat down, Troy passed by his desk and whispered, still pretending. Malik didn't reply, but he looked him in the eye. Just once. That was enough. Something about his stare was different now. It's like a storm was coming, and Troy had no idea. The hook-ending scene the school announced. Career Day would be held on Friday. Students were excited. Many parents had signed up to speak. Doctors, lawyers, business owners. Not Malik didn't say anything, but inside was counting the days his father had given his word. The teacher walked around, still no parent listed for. Malik, she said out loud, not even trying to hide her doubt. Malik looked at her and simply said, he'll come. The teacher raised an eyebrow. We'll see. Malik looked down at the photo inside his notebook one more time, not with sadness, but with patience. Because now, he wasn't hiding any. Malik sat by the window that evening, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. His fingers gently touched the edges of the old photo of his father in uniform. The same photo that everyone laughed at. The same photo that no one believed. The world outside was loud. Children playing, horns honking, dogs barking. But inside Malik's room, it was quiet. It's quiet. He could still hear the voices from school in his mind. Liar. It up, Pentagon, you wish. What? He closed his eyes, trying to shut the voices out, but they didn't leave. They stayed like shadows. The night he didn't speak, dinner was ready. The smell of warm rice and chicken filled the small house. His mother called him twice. Malik, come eat, baby. He didn't answer. She walked to his room and found him sitting on the bed, legs crossed, staring at the floor. Did something happen again? She asked softly. He didn't look up. Did they say something? Still no answer. She sat beside him and placed her hand gently on his back. You know, your silence says more than your words. Malik finally spoke. I don't want to go tomorrow. She nodded slowly. I understand, but your dad, he's coming, remember? Malik whispered. What if they still laugh? His mother held his hand. Then let them, 'cause this time your truth will speak louder than their jokes. Memories of strength that night. Malik couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind drifted back to a moment 3 years ago. He was just 9. He remembered standing in front of the Pentagon building, holding his dad's hand. Tightly. He was scared of the guards, the uniforms, the big guns. But his father had smiled and said, You don't have to be afraid of power when truth walks beside you. Malik smiled at the memory. That version of himself, small, nervous, proud, had disappeared somewhere in the laughter and bullying. He missed that version. He wanted him back. A quiet morning the next day at school. Malik was quiet even. More than usual. He didn't respond to jokes, didn't react to whispers. Even Troy's usual teasing didn't get a reaction. Did the Pentagon lose your dad? He said with a smirk. Malik kept looking out the window. It was Thursday, one day before career day, and Malik wasn't thinking about Troy anymore. He was thinking about the moment his father would walk through the school doors. He imagined the uniform, the boots, the badges. Imagine the silence in the room when the truth entered. A stranger's kindness during lunch. Malik sat alone, like always. But today, someone joined him. It was Maya, the girl who had believed him once. Hey, she said. He nodded, still nervous. A little she smiled. You shouldn't be. You're brave. Malik looked up. That word, brave.
Ow.
No one had called him that before. I'm not brave, he said. You are, she replied. You didn't lie. You didn't fight back. You just stayed true. She placed a folded piece of paper on the table. What's this? Malik asked. Something that might help tomorrow. She walked away before he could ask more. He opened the paper inside. It was a hand-drawn picture of a lion wearing a crown. Below, she had written, even when the world doubts the lion, he doesn't forget he's the king. The rain that hid the tears that evening, the sky turned dark. Heavy clouds rolled in, and rain began to fall. Malik sat by the window again, watching the drops hit the glass. His mother was cooking in the kitchen, humming an old tune. The house smelled like warm cornbread and butter. But Malik didn't feel warm inside. He tried to read a book, but his mind wandered. He tried to sleep, but his chest felt tight. Finally, he walked to the bathroom, turned on the tap, and let the water run. And then, he cried, not loud, not for long, just enough. Tears mixed with the water. On his face, silent tears, the kind that don't need a voice. A voice message from Dad later that night. His phone buzzed. It was a voice message from his father. He pressed play. Hey, champ, I'm packing my uniform now. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I'll be there first thing in the morning. And Malik, no matter what anyone says, never forget who you are and whose son you are. Malik didn't reply. He just placed the phone beside him, closed his eyes, and let the voice repeat in his mind like a song of hope. The build-up to the moment Friday morning came like thunder. Malik woke before his alarm. He dressed carefully. Clean shirt, neat pants, polished shoes, even brushed his hair twice. He placed the lion drawing from Maya in his notebook, and the photo of his father, his front pocket. Today would be different. At school, the halls were filled with excitement. Posters for career day were everywhere. Students waited eagerly for their parents to speak. The teacher walked in and clapped her hands. Let's begin. First, Sarah's mom, a heart doctor. The class clapped one by one. Parents came in, engineers, lawyers, even a chef. Every parent got respect and applause, but all eyes kept sneaking back to Malik. Will he come? Was it all fake? Did he make it up again? The teachers. Doubt around 10 a.m.? The teacher looked at her paper. Next on the list, Malik's father. She looked at the door. No one came in. She waited for 10 seconds. Anyone here for Malik? Still silence. Some kids giggled. Troy whispered loudly, "Maybe he works at McDonald's." Laughter again. The teacher frowned but didn't stop him. She turned back to the class and said, "Okay, moving on. Knock." Knock. A heavy knock came. From the door, every head turned. Even the teacher froze. She slowly walked to open it. Cliffhanger, ending scene hook and suspense as the door creaked open. A tall shadow stood at the entrance. Black boots, dark green uniform, silver medals shining across. The chest dot, broad shoulders, sharp eyes. The class went completely silent. Not a single whisper, not a single giggle. Malik looked up, slowly, and his lips began to shake. It was him, his father, Colonel David Walker, standing tall, proud, real. The teacher's eyes widened. She stepped back, unsure of what to say. Malik stood up, his tears filling his eyes again. But this time, they weren't tears of shame. They were silent tears of truth. The entire classroom was frozen. The man standing in the doorway wore a sharp military uniform. His chest carried medals. His shoulders stood tall with strength. His face was calm, but his eyes were full of power. Malik's father, Colonel David Walker. He stepped into the room, slow and steady. Every eye followed him. Every whisper died. Teacher took a step back. I wasn't sure you were coming," she said, trying to smile. The colonel gave a small nod. "Son asked me to be here. I always keep my promises." Malik stood up. His legs felt weak, but something inside him, pride, kept him straight. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but everything was understood. A room full of silence. Colonel Walker looked around at the class. He didn't smile. He didn't speak right away. Simply looked. His presence was powerful, unshakable. The kind of presence that demanded respect without asking for it. After a moment, he turned to the teacher. "May I speak to the class?" he asked politely. "Oh, of course," she replied. He walked to the front and faced the students. "My name is Colonel David Walker. I serve at the Pentagon. I've worked in military intelligence for over 20 years. I've traveled to war zones, worked with world leaders, and helped protect this country." He paused. "But today, I'm here as a father." He looked at Malik. "My son told me he was being laughed at for telling the truth. A truth no one believed. That truth was me." He looked back at the class. "You see, sometimes, when someone tells the truth, people don't want to believe it. Not because it sounds impossible, but because they've already judged the person. The truth hurt." Students lowered their eyes. Some fidgeted. Even Troy looked small in his chair now. Colonel Walker continued. "You laughed because my son didn't look rich, because he's quiet, because he doesn't brag. But your mistake wasn't about believing or not believing." He pointed gently. "Your mistake was thinking your voice was louder than his truth." The teacher looked down at her notes, uncomfortable. Malik sat in the back, barely blinking. His heart was racing. But this time, it was with pride. Flashback. Father and son as Colonel Walker spoke. Malik's mind drifted to a memory. It was a cold winter day. Years ago, Malik was sitting in a waiting room at the Pentagon. His feet dangled from the chair, too short to reach the floor. He waited quietly as guards passed, saluting his father. Finally, his father came out of a big hallway, wearing the same uniform he wore today. "Ready to go, soldier?" he asked Malik. Smiled and ran to him. They walked outside, and Malik asked, "Daddy, are you famous?" Colonel Walker chuckled.
"No."
"Just doing my duty? But everyone saluted you?" "They saluted the uniform, not me." Malik thought for a moment. "Then why do they listen to you?" His father knelt down. "Because I tell the truth, even when it's hard." Back to the present, the colonel's voice brought Malik back to the classroom. "I don't need anyone to believe me," Colonel Walker said. "The Pentagon knows who I am." The military knows who I am. My son knows who I am. That's enough. He turned toward the teacher. But I came today for one reason only, to stand beside my son. So, he doesn't have to stand alone. The power of a father's words. Colonel Walker walked to Malik's desk. He placed his hand gently on Malik's shoulder. You did well, son. You stayed calm. You stayed strong. Malik blinked back tears. They didn't believe me, he whispered. They didn't have to, his father replied. You believed in yourself. That's what matters. The change in the room. The class sat in silence. For the first time, no one laughed. No one whispered. The teasing had vanished like smoke. Troy shifted in his chair. He raised his hand awkwardly. Sir. I'm sorry, he said. Colonel Walker turned slowly. For what? For laughing. For not believing Malik. For judging him. The colonel looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Apology accepted. But remember, sorry is just a word unless your actions change. The teacher's guilt after the speech. The teacher approached the colonel as the students were let out for recess. I didn't know he was telling the truth, she said. Did you ask? He replied calmly. She hesitated. No, he nodded. Then maybe next time don't assume, especially when it comes to children. She looked down, ashamed. I'll do better. Outside the classroom, Malik and his father stood under a tree. Outside the school, the wind was soft. The sky was bright. Did you mean what you said in class? Malik asked. Every word. Malik looked down. I was scared they'd laugh again. They probably will, his father said honestly. Malik looked up surprised, but that doesn't mean they're right. Flashback. Letters from War. Malik remembered when he was younger and his father was sent overseas. Every month, a letter would arrive, handwritten, always ending with the same words. Be strong, be kind, tell the truth even when your voice shakes. He had read those letters so many times he could recite them in his sleep. Now, those words felt real because he had lived them. A quiet goodbye as Colonel Walker prepared to leave. He turned to Malik. You made me proud today. I didn't do anything, Malik said. You told the truth. You stood alone. That's everything. They hugged. A long, deep hug. Not just father to son, but soul to soul. A promise passed in silence. End scene. Suspense transition as Malik walked back into class. Something was different. Students moved aside to let him pass. Troy nodded at him. Even the teacher gave a small, respectful smile. But Malik didn't smile back. He just walked to his seat, pulled out his notebook, and opened to the page with Maya's drawing of the lion. He looked at it, and this time he believed it. He wasn't just a quiet boy. He was a lion. The day after Colonel Walker's visit, the school buzzed with whispers. Did you see him? He looked like someone from a movie Malik's dad really works at? The Pentagon. Some students were impressed. Others stayed quiet, unsure of how to react. A few, like Troy, acted like nothing had happened. But one thing was certain. No one laughed at Malik that day. Not openly. At least Malik walked through the halls with a new kind of silence. Not the silence of fear, but of strength still. Deep inside, he knew the storm wasn't over. A test. Of dignity, the next week, the school announced Parent Career Day would take place in the auditorium. It was a big event where students and their families would gather to listen to guest speakers talk about their jobs. The teacher passed out permission slips and smiled. I hope your parents can join us. This is a great way to share your story with others. When she reached Malik's desk, she hesitated, then placed the form down gently. I assume your father might be too busy to attend again? Malik looked up. He said he'll try. The teacher gave a half smile. Well, let's hope. Malik didn't respond. Whispers behind his back later that day, while Malik was at his locker. He overheard two boys from another class talking behind him. Bet his dad won't show up this time. Maybe last time was a setup. No. What if that guy was just an actor? Malik froze. He felt something crack inside. Not anger, but something colder.
Ow!
Something heavier. He turned around and said nothing. Just stared. The boys fell silent and walked away awkwardly. But their words were already planted a new seed of doubt. At home with questions that evening, Malik sat on the couch as his mom folded clothes. "Mom, do you think people ever change?" He looked up surprised. "What do you mean? Even when they say sorry, do they really mean it? Or do they just say it because they're caught?" She placed the folded shirt down and sat beside him. "Some people change. Others don't, but that's not your job to figure out. Then what is? To know who you are and not let their noise drown your voice." The day before career diet was Thursday. The school hallways were full of posters, doctors, nurses, architects, engineers, inspiring young minds. Each student was told to bring something related to their parents' job. Malik brought nothing. He didn't have a briefcase, stethoscope, or a blueprint. All he had was hope. Another blow after lunch, the teacher called Malik to her desk. "I'm trying to plan the order for tomorrow's presentations," she said, flipping through her chart. "If your father isn't coming, I need to know." Malik stared at the floor. "He said he'd come," she sighed. "Last-minute changes make it hard for the school to plan." "What? Why do you think he won't come?" he asked softly. The teacher blinked, surprised. "I'm just being realistic." Malik nodded and walked away. He didn't say anything, but his throat felt tight again. That old feeling. The one he thought was gone, it was back. Evening doubts that night. Rain poured outside. Malik sat on the edge of his bed, holding the same photo of his father in uniform. He hadn't heard from him all day. He checked his phone again. No new messages. What? If he can't come? What if they laugh again? What if it was all for nothing? Tears welled up in his eyes. But before they could fall, his phone buzzed. A message. "Dad. Flight delayed. Weather is rough. But don't worry. I'll be there. Even if I have to walk." Malik smiled. Just a little. Career day begins. Friday morning came. The sky was gray. Clouds hung low like heavy blankets. Students arrived early, dressed in clean clothes. Parents walked beside them, holding small briefcases, posters. Models Malik walked alone. He kept looking over his shoulder, hoping to see that green uniform again. But it wasn't there yet, in the auditorium. Students filled the chairs. Teachers lined up the parents on stage. The teacher called out each name proudly. Sarah, daughter of Dr. Lane. Nyler, son of Chief Engineer Martin. Aaron, whose mother designs video games. Cheers followed each name. Then, Malik. Walker. The room fell quiet. Malik stood slowly. The teacher looked around. "Is your father here?" Malik looked at the door. It was still closed. "No," he said. The class laughed quietly. The teacher sighed, shook her head, and said into the microphone, "Well, maybe next year." The walk of shame. Malik walked back to his seat, staring at the floor. Each step felt like a punch to his chest. He could hear whispers. "Where's the hero now?" "Told you it was fake. Probably made the whole thing up again." Malik sat down, numbed. His heart wasn't just breaking, it was sinking. The surprise at the end, just when the final parent was about to speak. The auditorium doors opened. Heavy. Boots echoed on the floor. Gasps filled the room. Colonel David Walker stood at the back. Soaked from the rain, but proud as ever. He wasn't in a car. He wasn't in an SUV. He had walked. All the way from the nearby airport, the teacher stood frozen. "Colonel Walker." He gave a respectful nod. "I apologize for being late. Weather issues. But I never miss my son's moment." Climax scene. Truth returns. He walked down the aisle as the room watched in silence. He stepped onto the stage, removed his wet cap, and stood behind the mic. "I'm Colonel Walker. Served this country at the Pentagon. More importantly, I serve as a father to a young man who taught me about patience and dignity." He looked at Malik. "You didn't lie. You didn't quit. You didn't run." Malik's eyes filled with tears again, but this time he let them fall, because these were no longer tears of pain. They were tears of pride. After Colonel Walker's powerful words, the auditorium gave a quiet, respectful applause. Not loud, not forced, just real. For the first time, everyone saw Malik not as the shy boy in the corner, but as the boy with a story. A story they had laughed at, ignored, doubted, but could no longer deny. Malik sat in silence as his father stepped off the stage and walked directly toward him. He knelt beside Malik, put his hand on his shoulder, and said softly, "You stood taller than a soldier today." Malik blinked back fresh tears. "Thanks for coming, Dad. I'll always come." Whispers turned to respect. As they walked through the school hallway together, students moved aside, not like before when they avoided him, but with quiet respect. A few nodded at him. Maya gave him a proud smile. Even Troy kept his eyes down and mumbled, "Hey, Malik, cool, Dad?" Malik didn't reply, but inside something was changing. Not just the way people saw him, but the way he saw himself. After the applause later that evening, Malik and his father sat together at a small cafe. The rain had stopped. The air was cool and calm, Colonel Walker said, sipping his coffee. "You taught me something these past few weeks." Malik looked surprised. "Me? What could I teach you?" "That silence doesn't mean weakness. It means strength. The kind that waits for the right moment." Malik smiled. "I was scared." "So was I," his father admitted. "Scared that they'd never see your truth. But you waited. And then you spoke with your story." Malik's smile faded a little. They still laughed first. His father nodded. "They always do. But it's not about the first laugh. It's about the last word." A strange phone call later that night as they got home. Malik's mom greeted them at the door. "Hey, heroes," she joked, handing them towels. "You both looked like wet warriors." They all laughed. But before Malik could say anything, the house phone rang. A landline. No one used it much anymore. His mom frowned and picked it up. "Hello? Yes, he's here. Just a second." She handed the phone to Malik. "It's someone from your school." Malik's heart skipped. He took the phone. "Hello?" a deep voice answered. "Is this Malik Walker?" "Yes, sir. This is Principal Harris. I wasn't at the Career Day assembly, but I've heard a lot. I'd like to speak to you and your father tomorrow. Is that possible?" Malik blinked. Sure. Good. 9 a.m. Bring him along." The line went dead. Malik turned to his parents. "They want to see us tomorrow morning." A new fear that night. Malik lay awake again, but not from shame or sadness. This time, it was something else. Nervousness, curiosity, maybe even fear. Why did the principal want to talk to them? Had someone complained? Was there trouble again? Or was it something more? The meeting the next morning, Malik and his father arrived at the school and entered the main office. The secretary smiled, led them to the principal's office. "Principal." Harris stood and shook Colonel Walker's hand. "Sir, thank you for coming. I watched a video of your speech yesterday. Powerful stuff." "Thank you," the colonel said. Malik sat quietly, hands in his lap. "I wanted to speak with both of you because something important came up." He opened a folder and pulled out a letter. "This," he said, "is a scholarship nomination form." Malik looked up, confused. "I don't understand." Principal Harris smiled. "A program is opened up for students from military families, especially those who've shown courage in difficult school situations. One of your teachers nominated you." Malik's eyes widened. "Me?" "Yes. You've been selected for consideration. It's early, but if accepted, this could mean full support for your future education." Malik didn't know what to say. His father placed a hand on his back. "You see," he whispered. Truth always calls back. The power of the call after the meeting. They sat outside on a bench. Malik held the scholarship form in his hands. "I didn't even apply," he said. "Sometimes," his father said, "when the truth gets out, opportunity calls on its own." Malik nodded, but inside, a new feeling began to grow. Hope, not just for school, not just for respect, but for a future where his voice wouldn't need to fight to be heard. Back in class, when Malik returned to class, the students turned to look at him. Some whispered, but this time it wasn't mocking. It was curiosity, admiration, even envy. Troy raised his hand. "Miss, can I change my career report? I want to write about the military." The teacher blinked. "Why?" He glanced at Malik. "Think it's cool now?" A few students chuckled. But Malik just smiled, not because he was proud, but because he knew. Finally, they were starting to listen. Ending scene hook and transition as the bell rang and students left the class. Malik walked slower than usual. His notebook tucked under one arm, his father's words in his mind. At the door, the teacher stopped him. Malik. He turned. She looked a little nervous. I owe you an apology. He didn't say anything. I doubted you. I smiled when others laughed. I let you stand alone. Malik looked her in the eyes. I remember, he said quietly. She nodded, but I also remember your silence. It was louder than my voice. He nodded once and walked away sometimes. Forgiveness doesn't need words, just understanding. The week after career day was different. No more jokes. No more whispers. No more doubt. 4. The first time in a long time, Malik felt like he belonged. People greeted him. Maya sat beside him at lunch. Even Troy nodded whenever they passed in the hall. But something still didn't feel right. Malik could sense it, like an empty chair at the dinner table. Everyone saw the soldier. Everyone clapped. For the uniform. But would they still respect him if the uniform wasn't there? A question in the mirror on Sunday morning. Malik stood in front of the mirror, brushing his hair slowly. He stared at his own reflection. Just a skinny black boy. No uniform. No medals. No proud father beside him. Just Malik. The thought hit him hard. Do they respect me, or just my dad? He turned away from the mirror and sat on the edge of the bed. The pride he felt last week was real, but now, a quiet doubt had crept in. The conversation later that day, while Malik helped his dad pack for the return flight, he finally asked, Dad, would they still respect me if you didn't wear the uniform? Colonel Walker paused, folding his shirt. What do you think? I don't know, Malik whispered. I feel like they only saw me because of you. His father sat down beside him. Son, that uniform opened a door, but you made them listen. You stayed quiet when they laughed. You didn't run, but what if they forget again? They might, his father said. That's life. Don't wear their respect like a borrowed jacket. Wear your own truth like a second skin. Back to normal. Almost the next morning, at school, things started to slip back into routine. The halls weren't as loud. The smiles weren't as frequent. Some kids returned to their old groups. Troy stopped saying hi. The teacher went back to her usual tone. And Malik started to feel invisible again. No one was mean, but no one noticed. The history project that week, the class began a group history project. Each team had to choose a topic about truth and justice in American history. The teacher assigned Malik to a group with Troy, Maya, and 2 others. All right, group, she said, choose your topic by Friday. As the group sat together in the corner of the library, the awkwardness was clear. Troy cleared his throat. So, how about Martin Luther King? Everyone's doing that, Maya replied. What about Malcolm X? Malik offered. Troy shrugged. He was cool, I guess. But wasn't he, like, violent? Malik frowned. No, he spoke out. Got angry because the world didn't listen. Kind of like how you all didn't listen to me. Troy went quiet. Maya looked between them. That could actually work, she said. Let's do it. Invisible again over the next few days. Malik noticed something strange. During presentations and team discussions, the others started taking credit for his ideas. Whenever Malik spoke, the group nodded politely, but no one wrote his words down. When he shared research, they skimmed it and moved on. And when the teacher walked over, Troy did most of the talking. We've done great work, he said once. I found this quote and Maya found the images. He didn't mention Malik, not even once. Malik just stared at the table, invisible again. A talk with Maya after school. Malik caught up to Maya outside. Why didn't you say anything? He asked. About what? In the group. I'm the one. Who suggested Malcolm X? I'm the one who brought the video clips. She looked down. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was happening. You noticed you just didn't stop it. She sighed. You're right. There was silence between. Then, she said softly. You're not invisible, Malik. You're just quieter than the rest? He nodded. I used to think that was a weakness. It's not, she said. It's your strength. But sometimes you have to make them hear you. The decision that night, Malik sat with his notebook open. He thought about everything. The teasing, the silence, the respect, the fading attention. And now, the group ignoring him again. He turned to a blank page and began to write. Not research, not facts, not history, but his own story, the truth, his truth. And for the first time, he didn't hold back. The presentation on Friday. Each group gave their presentations in front of the class. Troy stepped forward with a smile. Today, we'll talk about Malcolm X, a powerful black leader who believed in fighting for truth with strength. He flipped slides, quoted speeches, and nodded proudly. But just as the presentation was about to end, Malik raised his hand. Miss, can I add something? The teacher looked surprised. Troy looked nervous. Go ahead, she said. Malik stepped forward. I wrote something, he said. Not about Malcolm X, about why I chose him. He unfolded a piece of paper. Then he spoke. Malik's truth. I chose Malcolm X because he wasn't afraid to be loud even when the world called him angry. I've been quiet most of my life. People think silence means weak, but sometimes silence is survival. When I said my dad worked at the Pentagon, people laughed. When he showed up, they clapped. But when he left, they forgot again. I don't wear a uniform. I don't have medals. I just have a voice. And today, I'm using it not for applause, but for truth. Malcolm X once said, if you're not careful, the media will. Have you hating the people being oppressed and loving the people doing the oppressing? That happened to me right here. But I'm still here and I'm not silent anymore. He folded the paper and looked up. The class was silent. Then they clapped. This time not because of the uniform, not because of the father, but because Blake had become the voice. Ending scene hook in suspense after class. The teacher called Malik to her desk. That was powerful, she said. Why didn't you tell me earlier you had written that? Malik shrugged. Because I wanted to speak when they were finally ready to listen. She nodded, then added, bye. The way a journalist from the local newspaper called, they heard about Career Day. They want to interview you, not your dad. Malik blinked. Me? Yes, she smiled. They said, your story deserves to be heard. It started with a phone call, then an email, then a camera crew in the school parking lot by Monday morning. Malik Walker wasn't just the quiet boy with the military father anymore. He was the boy who made the school listen. The boy whose truth shook a classroom. The boy who stood alone and then stood tall, and now his story was going to the world. The local news when Malik arrived at school. That morning, a small news van was parked outside the main gate. A young reporter stood beside it, holding a mic and adjusting her earpiece. Inside the hallway, students whispered, did you hear? Max. Gonna be on the news. They're doing a story about him and his dad. I think they're recording. Today, Malik walked slowly, his backpack feeling heavier than usual, not because of books, but because of attention. Everyone was watching now, not laughing, not teasing, just watching. Meeting the reporter at 10 a.m., principal called Malik to the office. Miss Jasmine Reed is here to speak with you, he said. She's from Channel 7. Malik entered the room and found a woman in a red coat, smiling kindly at him. Hi, Malik. I'm Jasmine. First of all, I just want to say what you did, speaking your truth. That was brave. Malik nodded slowly. I just told the truth. And that's exactly why we're here, she smiled. They sat down for a short interview. Her questions were soft, respectful. Why didn't you speak up earlier? Because I thought no one would believe me. What changed?
My dad showed up.
But more than that, I realized my silence was louder than their noise. She smiled again. That's going to stay with a lot of people. The class watches later that day. The teacher brought in a TV cart for the class to watch the evening news. Teaser. Everyone sat quietly, and then they saw it. Coming up at 6, A local boy stood alone when no one believed him, until his truth walked through the door. The story of Malik Walker. Malik sank into his chair, nervous. Maya looked at him and whispered, "You did it." He didn't smile, because he knew. This wasn't the end. The weight of the spotlight that evening at home, Malik sat on the couch with his parents. It's the news. Came on, and the story aired. Photos of Malik, clips of his classroom speech, even a short comment from his teacher, saying he reminded us what it means to listen. When it ended, there was a pause in the room. His mom wiped her eyes. His dad put an arm around him. "You handled it like a man," he said. But Malik wasn't sure how he felt. Yes, people were listening now. But would they still listen tomorrow? Next day, some students looked at him differently. Not all the attention was good. He's just getting famous because of his dad. Bet he didn't even write that speech himself. He's acting like a celebrity now. Malik heard them. He didn't reply. But the doubt hurt more now, because it came wrapped in jealousy. Even success had its price. A message from a stranger after school. Malik checked his email. There was a new message. Subject: I saw you on the news from a veteran you inspired. He opened it slowly. Dear Malik, my name is James Carter. Served 18 years in the Army and now work as a janitor at a community center. When I saw your story, I cried. 'Cause I was you. Ignored, doubted, dismissed. But you spoke anyway. Thank you for reminding people that truth doesn't need a title. Stay strong. Keep speaking. James Malik read it twice. Then again. Then. He printed it out and placed it inside his notebook this time. Felt the pride settle deeper. Not loud, just real. The interview followed on Thursday. School counselor asked to speak with him privately. Malik, I'm proud of how you handled all this, but I also want to check in. All this attention, the media, the pressure, it's a lot. Are you okay? Malik shrugged. I think so. Can I ask? Do you want to keep going? More interviews? Public speaking? Malik paused. I don't want to be famous. Then what do you want? He looked at her. To be heard, not just for this, but for everything I've always been quiet about. A new offer the next day. His teacher gave him a letter from the principal's office. It was from the school district office. Dear Malik, we would like to invite you to speak at our annual Youth Voices Conference. Your story has reminded us of the power of honesty, dignity, and courage. We believe other students across the city should hear your voice. Malik stared at the letter. Another chance. Another stage. More eyes. It's more ears. More pressure. The fear returns that night. Malik lay awake again. He thought about the boys who still whispered. The teacher who once doubted him. The classmates who clapped once and forgot. And now, this stage. What if he messed up? What if they stopped listening halfway through? What if they clapped politely, then forgot again? He turned to the wall and whispered to himself, I didn't ask for this. But deep inside, another voice answered, no, but maybe you were. Built for it, the next morning, Malik stood by his bedroom mirror again. This time, wasn't looking at fear. He was looking at decision. He picked up the printed email from veteran James Carter. He opened his notebook, and then, slowly, he began. Writing again, not because he had to, but because someone out there, just one more person, still needed to hear the truth. The invitation to speak at the Youth Voices Conference sat on Malik's desk all week. He hadn't said yes, he hadn't said no, but every time he walked past it, he felt something in his chest. Not fear, not pride, but responsibility. He knew this wasn't about attention. Anymore, it was about every kid who had ever been laughed at for telling the truth. Every student who had been ignored, every voice that had been talked over. The stage wasn't just calling his name, it was calling his story. The practice on Saturday. Malik sat in the living room while his mom and dad listened quietly. He read his speech out loud, slowly, clearly, from the handwritten pages of his notebook. He spoke about silence, spoke about doubt. He spoke about being a shadow in his own school. And then he spoke about the day his father walked in. Everything changed. When he finished, there was a long pause. His mother had tears in her eyes. His father nodded once, then said softly, "You found your voice." Malik looked down at the notebook. "I'm still scared. That means you're about to do something important." The ride to the conference on. The morning of the conference, Malik wore a simple button-up shirt and clean shoes. No fancy clothes. No spotlight style. Just himself. As they drove through the city, he looked out the window and saw billboards, busy streets, and tall buildings. He wondered how many people down there had ever been told, "You're lying just for speaking there." Truth. He held the notebook tight in his hands. His words weren't perfect. His grammar wasn't fancy, but they were his. And that was enough. Arrival. The school auditorium where the conference was being held looked massive from the outside. Banners waved in the wind. Youth Voices 2025 speak. Rise lead. Inside, dozens of students sat in rows, wearing name tags and holding folders. Some practiced speeches. Some looked nervous. Some acted confident, maybe too confident. Malik sat near the back, quiet, waiting. When the host called his name, something shifted in the room. "Please welcome Malik Walker," a student whose truth shook an entire classroom. People turned. Whispers rose. Some clapped softly. Malik stood up and walked to the stage. The spotlight as the lights hit him. The room fell quiet. He stood behind the microphone, notebook in hand, heart pounding. He looked up. He didn't see faces. He saw eyes waiting, watching, judging, or maybe just hoping. He took a breath and began. "Malik's speech. When I was younger, I believed the truth would speak for itself. But then I said something true, and people laughed. I told them my father worked at the Pentagon. They said I was lying. They looked at my clothes, my skin, my silence, and they decided I didn't look like the truth. That day I learned something. Truth doesn't shout, but it waits. And it walks in when you least expect it. When my father walked into my classroom in full uniform, the room went silent. But I realized something even bigger. People only believed me because they believed him. What if he hadn't come? What if I didn't have that proof? My truth still matter? That's why I'm standing here. Not because of my dad's medals, not because of a news story, but because I believe every voice deserves to be heard, even when it's small, especially when it's small. A pause and a clappy. Closed the notebook, looked at the audience, and waited. It was only 2 seconds, but it felt like forever then. Someone clapped, then another, then the whole room. But this time, Malik didn't flinch, because he knew. They weren't clapping for his father. They were clapping for him. After the speech backstage, several students came up to him. A girl from another school said, "Thank you. I'm the only Muslim girl in my class. No one ever believes me either." Another boy said, "Man, I've been quiet my whole life. You gave me courage." Even a teacher said, "You reminded me why I became an educator." Malik smiled. Not wide, not loud. Just true. A message from the reporter later that day. His mom handed him her phone. "It's Jasmine, the news reporter. She watched your speech online." He took the phone. "Hello, doll." Her voice was warm. "Malik. You've started something bigger than just one classroom." He said nothing. She continued. "Would you be open to speaking at a youth event next month? It's with kids from across the state." Malik hesitated. "I don't know." "You don't have to say yes. Just think about it. The stage is always there, but your story, that's rare." The walk home that night, Malik and his father walked together. No cameras, no microphones, just two shadows on a sidewalk. "Do you think I'm really helping people?" Malik asked. His father looked at the sky. "You're doing what most grown men can't. You're turning pain into purpose." They walked a little farther. Then his dad added, "You used to hide behind my story, but now I stand behind yours." Malik looked up, and this time he believed it. As they reached home, Malik checked his phone. One new message from the National Youth Panel. Subject: "We heard you." He opened it. Your story reached us. We'd like to invite you to our National Student Summit in Washington, D.C. Let us know if you're ready. Malik stared at the screen. Washington, the place his father worked, and now, the place that wanted to hear him. The message sat open on Malik's phone. Subject: we heard you from National Youth Summit Team, Washington, D.C. Dear Malik, we watched your speech at the Youth Voices Conference. Your honesty and strength moved us deeply. We would be honored to invite you to speak at the National Student Summit in Washington, D.C. this fall. Please let us know if you're available. Travel and arrangements will be fully covered. We believe your voice can inspire the nation. Malik stared at the screen. Washington, D.C., where his father worked, where the Pentagon stood, where decisions that shaped the world were made. Now, they wanted to hear him? The silence before the answer, his mom stood nearby, drying dishes. Everything okay, Malik? He hesitated. They want me to speak in Washington. She turned, eyes wide. The Washington? He nodded. I don't know. If I should, she walked over slowly. Why not? I'm just a kid. She looked him in the eyes. Exactly. That's why your voice matters. Talking to his father later that night, he sat across from his dad at the dinner table. They invited me to Washington, Malik said. His dad raised an eyebrow. The summit, Malik nodded. I don't think I can do it. That's your world. You wear the uniform. You're the strong one. Colonel Walker put down his fork and leaned forward. Double quote, son, let me tell you something. People see my uniform and they assume I'm brave. But real bravery, standing without armor. And you've been doing that your whole life. Malik looked down. You think I can do it? The decision that night, Malik sat with the invitation in his hand. He thought about everything. The classroom, the laughter, the uniform, the silence, the applause, and now, the biggest stage of his life. He opened his email and typed, Yes, I accept. The invitation. Thank you for believing in my story. He clicked send, then exhaled deeply. Preparation. Begins the next week was full of planning, flights, hotels, itinerary, but most importantly, the speech. What should I say? He asked his mom. Say what's true, she replied. He sat with his notebook, flipping through old pages, stories, moments, feelings. But this time, he wanted to speak not just for himself, but for every child who had ever been doubted. The tripod. The day of the flight, Malik wore a navy blue sweater and jeans. Nothing flashy, just comfortable at the airport. People moved quickly around them. Planes roared. Announcements echoed. His dad walked beside him, calm and confident. First time flying? A security guard asked Malik with a smile. Yes, sir, Malik replied. You'll be fine. Just breathe. Arrival in D.C., the plane touched. Down in the evening, as they drove past tall buildings, Malik looked out the window. There's the Capitol, his dad said. And over there, the Pentagon. Malik stared at the massive building. My whole life, he whispered. Only believed me because of that place. His father replied, And now you're going to make them believe you with no building behind you? The summit hall the next morning, Malik entered the grand hall where the summit was being held. Rows of chairs, bright lights. Flags on the walls, journalists, teachers, students from all across the country. A large banner read National Student Summit, Voices That Matter. He felt his hands sweat, his heart beat fast, but he kept walking. Because this time, he wasn't afraid of the crowd. He was ready for them. The green room backstage. A volunteer handed him a mic. 10 minutes until you're up. Malik nodded. He closed his eyes. He thought of the boy who sat alone at lunch, who got laughed at for telling the truth, who stayed quiet when the teacher smirked, who cried alone in his room. That boy was still here. But now, he had a voice. Malik's national speech. Malik stepped onto the stage. Flashes clicked. The crowd hushed. He looked around, then began. My name is Malik Walker. I'm not famous. I don't have 1 million followers. I'm just a kid who once told the truth and got laughed at. I said my dad works at the Pentagon. They said you. Impossible. They looked at my clothes, my skin, my silence. They decided I didn't belong to something great. But the truth didn't leave. The truth walked in, wearing a uniform. And suddenly, They believed. But I ask you this. What if he hadn't come? Would my words still matter? Truth should never depend on proof. It should never wear a uniform, just to be heard. I speak today for every quiet kid, for every student who was told to sit down, for every story that was doubted because of how it looked. You don't need medals to be heard. You need honesty. You need heart, and you need the courage to speak even when they laugh. He paused, then looked into the crowd, because sometimes your voice won't echo at first, but one day it will reach the right ears, and when it does, it changes everything. A standing ovation, the room rose to their feet. No whispers, no doubts, just hands clapping, tears in eyes, cameras flashing, and Malik standing tall in the center of it all. Backstage moment his. Father met him backstage. He didn't say anything, just pulled Malik into a tight hug and whispered, "You didn't just speak for yourself. You spoke for all of us." As they prepared to leave, a woman approached them. She was from the Department of Education. She smiled warmly. "Malik, we'd like to talk to you about helping us shape a new national program, one that trains teachers to truly listen to their students." Malik looked at his father. His father nodded, and for the first time Malik realized he wasn't just telling a story anymore. He was becoming a part of changing the system. The flight back from Washington, D.C. was quiet, not because Malik had nothing to say, but because his heart was full of voices, applause, ideas, and dreams. He stared out the window as the clouds passed by, thinking, what happens after the speech? He had told the truth. People had listened. But now, something bigger had begun. Back to school, but not the same. When Malik returned to school, things looked the same. It felt completely different. The halls were still noisy. The classrooms still smelled like pencils and paper. The bell still rang the same way. But now students stopped him in the hall. "Hey, you were on TV, right? You went to D.C.? That was crazy. Can you help me write something like that?" Teachers smiled at him more. Even the principal gave him a quiet nod in the hallway. But Malik didn't act like a celebrity. He just wanted to be real. Because this wasn't about fame. It was about every unheard voice like his, a new invitation that week. The school counselor called him into her office. "You've been asked to join the Student Leadership Council, Malik." He looked surprised. "Me? Why?" "Because students trust you. They feel you. And more importantly, you listen." Psst. Malik sat still for a moment. He remembered how he once sat in silence, afraid to speak now. They were asking him to help others speak. He nodded. "I'll do it." The first meeting, the student council, was made up of students from every grade. Some were loud, some were shy, some were brand new. Malik sat quietly at first. Then the advisor said, "Let's talk about what needs to change in this school. Students," began listing ideas. Better lunches, less homework, new sports equipment. Then a younger girl raised her hand. "Can we talk about how teachers treat us?" The room went silent. A few students looked away, but Malik looked at her, straight and strong. He raised his hand. "I think we should start there." Speaking truth again over the next few days, Malik worked with a group of students to create a proposal called Project Listen. The goal? To help teachers understand how students feel when they're ignored, doubted, or judged too quickly. They created surveys, gathered stories, and even filmed short interviews with students from every background. One clip showed a boy saying, "I told my teacher my mom works 3 jobs, but she said I was making excuses." Another clip showed a girl whispering, "I don't raise my hand anymore. They just pick the loud kids." Malik's job. To write the final message, Project Listen speech, mini speech, at the next school board meeting. Malik stood at the front with his group behind him. He held his notebook and began. "We're not here to complain. We're here to be heard. We believe every student has a voice, but not every student knows they're allowed to use it. We're not asking teachers to be perfect. We're asking them to see us, really see us. We want classrooms where truth isn't judged by the way we look, speak, or sit. We want silence to be respected and stories to be believed. Project Listen isn't just a program. It's a promise. He closed the notebook. Silence. Then applause. Real. Deep. Respectful. The board's response. After the meeting, the superintendent approached Malik. "Young man," he said, "this is the kind of leadership our schools have needed for years." He shook Malik's hand firmly. "We'll begin testing. Project Listen in 3 schools next semester. You'll help lead that, won't you?" Malik blinked. "Yes, sir." Another door had opened. But this one wasn't for him to walk through alone. This one was wide enough for many voices. Helping others rise over the next few weeks, Malik started. Visiting other classrooms, younger grades especially, he sat in circles with kids and asked them questions like, "What's something you wish adults understood about you? What's a time you told the truth and no one believed you? What does it mean to feel seen?" One little boy said, "Sometimes I don't talk because I'm scared my voice is too small." Malik knelt beside him and said, "Mine was, too, until I used it anyway." A message from Mr. Carter one day after school. Malik got another email. It was from James Carter, the retired veteran who had written to him after seeing him on the news. Malik, I watched your DC speech. Online, I cried again. What you're doing isn't just inspiring, it's planting seeds. I've started a community writing class for teens in my neighborhood. We call it Voices Unmuted, all because of you. Malik sat back in his chair. His story had reached a classroom, then a city, then the capital, now a neighborhood. He had never seen family moment that evening. Malik sat at the dinner table, quietly smiling. His dad noticed. "What's going on, soldier?" Malik grinned. "I think something's starting." "What do you mean?" "It's not just for me, but for other kids. It's like every time I speak, someone else feels strong enough to speak too." His father nodded slowly. "That's called a movement." Later that night, Malik pinned something to his wall. A simple piece of paper that read, "Your voice can be the start of someone else's courage." As he stepped back, his phone buzzed. A new message. This time, from an international. "School in South Africa. Malik, we watched your speech. Would you consider joining a youth panel via video? Your words matter here too." He stared at the screen and slowly smiled. The message came late at night. Malik had just finished brushing his teeth when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Subject: Your voice reached us from Ubuntu School, Cape Town, South Africa. He opened it carefully, not even sure where Cape Town was on a map. Dear Malik, we are students at the Ubuntu School in South Africa. Our teacher showed us your Washington speech. Many of us feel the same way, like our voices are too small to be heard. Would you join us next week on a live video panel? We want to ask questions, share stories, and learn from your journey. You inspired us. We hope to meet you soon. Malik sat quietly. His story had crossed an ocean, and now the world was listening, asking his parents the next morning. Malik showed the email to his parents over breakfast. His mom gasped softly. "South Africa, Malik. That's amazing." His dad read the message slowly, then nodded with pride. "Ubuntu means humanity," he said. "It's a powerful word. It's about how our lives are connected." Malik smiled. "It fits, doesn't it?" His dad smiled back. "Perfectly." Preparing for the panel that week, Malik worked with the Ubuntu teacher to plan the virtual session. He learned that the school was small, in a quiet neighborhood, and mostly served kids from low-income families. Most students spoke multiple languages: English, Xhosa, and Zulu. Some had internet at home, some didn't, but every one of them had stories. Just like him, the teacher said. "Malik, they don't want a fancy speech. They just want someone real. Someone who knows what it feels like to be overlooked." "I know that feeling," Malik replied softly. "I know it well." The day of the Callan, Friday morning, Malik sat at the dining table with his laptop open. He wore a plain t-shirt. No script, no podium, just him. At 8 a.m. sharp, the screen lit up, faces appeared, smiling, waving, curious. Some students wore uniforms. Some sat in rooms with cracked walls and open windows. One girl held her baby sister while listening. A boy leaned close to the camera and said, Is that really you, Malik Walker? Malik smiled shyly. Yeah, it's really me. The class clapped. The teacher laughed. Okay, let's begin. The questions begin. One student asked, How did you know your story mattered when no one believed you? Malik replied, I didn't know. I hoped, and I kept telling it anyway. Another girl asked, Were you ever afraid you'd say the wrong thing? Malik nodded, almost every time. But I learned silence is safe, but truth is strong. Small boy with short curly hair raised his hand. What do we do when teachers don't listen? Malik leaned closer to the screen. You keep speaking anyway, not to fight them, but to remind them. We're here, we feel, we count. The surprise? At the end of the session, the teacher said, We have something for you, Malik. She held up a hand-painted card. Each student had written one sentence inside. They read a few aloud. You made my fear smaller. Now I believe my voice matters too. You are a brother to us across the sea. Malik blinked back tears. He had spoken thousands of miles away. But somehow, these voices felt like home. A personal message from a student after the session ended. Malik received a private message from one of the students, a girl named Ayanda. Asterisk, Dear Malik, I used to write poems, but stopped when a teacher laughed at them. After hearing you, I wrote again today. Thank you for making me believe again. Asterisk attached was a photo of a crumpled page with a neat handwriting. The title said, Voice Like Mine. Malik printed it out and pinned it beside his first speech. A new purpose that night. Malik sat at his desk with a notebook in front of him. He flipped to a blank page. At the top, he wrote, Voices Across Borders. He began writing an idea for a youth-led network, a global program, where kids from different countries could share their stories. No cameras, no fame, just honesty, just connection. His mom walked in and saw the title. What's that? Malik looked up. A movement. An unexpected visitor the next day, Malik was called to the principal's office again. But this time, surprise waited. A woman stood there, dressed in professional clothes, holding a tablet. Hello, Malik. I'm from the United Nations Youth Leadership Council. We've been watching your journey. Malik froze. The United Nations. She nodded. Double quotes, We want you to join our global youth storytelling project. It's time students from all countries tell their truth. And we'd like you to help lead. That night, Malik lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his classroom, his father's footsteps, the laughter, the silence, the stage, the South African students, Ayanda's poem, and now, the world he whispered to himself, I used. To think no one heard me. Now I speak, and the world is whispering back. We hear you too. Malik Walker used to sit alone at the back of the classroom now. He sat at the front of a virtual table with students from all over the world, from Brazil to Bangladesh, from South Africa to Syria, from tiny villages to big cities. Each square on the screen held a face, a flag, a story. They were part of the Global Youth Storytelling Project, and Malik had been chosen as one of the founding voices. But even with all this attention, he still didn't feel like a leader. The first global meeting, the host smiled as faces joined the call. Welcome, everyone. You've all been selected because you carry something powerful, your truth. Malik sat still, listening. One girl from Colombia said, People said, I was too dark to be a beauty queen. I wrote my story. Now it's in 3 languages. A boy from Palestine said, My school was bombed, but I kept learning. Now I teach poetry in a refugee camp. Each voice rose. Each truth hurt and healed. When it was Malik's turn, he hesitated, then spoke softly. I told the truth in class. They laughed. But when my father walked in, wearing a uniform, they believed. That's when I realized. Sometimes people don't hear you until the world makes them listen. But we shouldn't have to wear proof to be heard. Quiet doubt returns after the call. Malik sat alone at his desk. Everyone else had such big stories. His felt small again. I didn't survive a war, he thought. I wasn't homeless. I just got laughed at. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Maybe he didn't belong here after all. But then he remembered something Ayanda from South Africa had said during the last panel. A voice doesn't need volume to matter. It just needs courage. He took a deep breath and began writing again. A letter from a former teacher that evening. Malik got a message from someone. Unexpected. His old teacher. The one who had once smirked when he said his dad worked at the Pentagon. Asterisk, Dear Malik, I watched your speech online. I was wrong. About you. About what strength looks like. I used to think leadership wore badges. Now I know. Sometimes it carries notebooks. I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you. Asterisk, Malik read the message 3 times. He didn't reply right away. But inside, the part of him healed. Building the Story Hub with the help of the United Nations Youth Council. Malik and the other students launched a digital platform called Echo Real Stories. Real voices. Students from around the world could upload short voice clips, poems, letters, or stories. No likes, no followers, just listening. The first story posted was a 2-minute voice note from a girl in Afghanistan. Asterisk, when I told my uncle I wanted to study engineering, he laughed. Now I build small machines in secret, and I dream loud in silence. Asterisk, thousands listened and cried. Malik listened too. He added her quote to his wall. A call from the Pentagon one morning. Malik's father knocked on his bedroom door. Someone wants to speak with you, he said. He handed Malik his phone. Hello? Malik said. A deep, calm voice replied. Malik Walker, this is General Daniels from the Pentagon Youth Engagement Office. Malik sat up straight. I saw what you're doing with Echo. We believe it's the kind of leadership we need, not just in schools, but across nations. Malik said nothing. The general continued. We'd like to invite you to speak at our Global Peace and Youth Summit next month in person. A difficult question that night at dinner. Malik's mom asked, How do you feel about this? Malik shrugged. I'm grateful, but... She asked gently, Why do they listen now? Why not when I was just a quiet boy in class? His father replied, They didn't change overnight. It changed how they see quiet. You showed them. Silence can speak. Truth can travel. Malik nodded, but part of him still wondered. Do I speak for those like me? Or have I become someone too far from where I began? A walk through his old school the next morning. Malik asked the principal if he could speak to the new 6th graders. He walked into a classroom that looked just like his old one. Same color walls, same cheap chairs, same nervous energy. He told them his story. Not the DC version, not the global version, the real one. They laughed when I spoke. I almost believed them. But your story doesn't stop because someone else doesn't believe it. You don't need cameras or stages. You just need the courage to say it anyway. One small boy raised his hand. If I speak and nothing changes, Malik knelt next to him and speak again. And one day, you'll be the change. Back home, Malik opened his notebook and wrote at the top of a new page. Not just my voice, ours. He looked at the stories pinned on his wall. Ayanda's poem, The Girl Engineer from Afghanistan, the email from his old teacher. The quote from the Colombian girl, the boy from his school, who now writes rap lyrics. He whispered to himself, They laughed at one voice. Now they listen to thousands. And then his phone buzzed. A message from a school in Japan. Your words helped our class start a project called Voice Doesn't Need Volume. Would you visit? Malik smiled softly. The world was still listening. The world was listening, from small towns to big cities, from war-torn countries to quiet classrooms. From kids with no voice to kids just discovering their own. And at the center of it all is Malik Walker. But what happens when the world listens, and then suddenly someone tells you to be quiet again? The Global Peace and Youth Summit, the Pentagon's Global Peace and Youth Summit was being held in New York City this year. Malik had been invited to speak on a panel titled Voices That Build Peace. Leaders from over 20 countries would be there. Ambassadors, diplomats, generals, journalists, educators. It was the biggest audience Malik had ever faced. But he wasn't nervous, not until they sent him a note with one sentence. Please avoid topics that may appear politically sensitive. He read it twice. Then again, it wasn't loud, it wasn't mean, it was clear. Say your truth, but not too much. The quiet before the storm that night, Malik sat in the hotel room, staring out the window. He thought about everything. The first time they laughed at him, the first time someone clapped, the South African girl, the Afghan engineer, the echo stories. He opened his notebook to write his speech, but paused. If he spoke the truth the way he always had, would they stop listening? Would the doors close? Would everything fall apart? His father knocked gently and walked in. Ready for tomorrow? Malik shook his head. They told me to be careful. His father sat beside him. Sometimes they invite your voice, but not your truth. Malik looked up. What do I do? His dad didn't answer. He just asked, why did you start speaking? The stage again the next day. Malik stood backstage with a mic clipped to his shirt. A large audience waited. The other panelists were already seated, 2 youth leaders from Europe, one from the Middle East, and an environmental activist from Brazil. The host introduced him. Our final speaker is someone who reminded us that courage doesn't always wear medals. Please welcome Malik Walker. The crowd clapped softly. He walked to the podium. He saw the flashing lights, the recording cameras, the diplomats in suits. He took a breath and began. Malik's speech unfiltered. I was asked to avoid saying anything sensitive. But truth has never been soft. Truth has never waited for permission. And peace has never come from silence. When I first told my story, they laughed. Because I didn't look like the truth. Because my skin, my clothes, my quiet voice didn't match what they believed power looked like. But power is not just uniforms. It's honesty. It's the courage to speak even when you're asked not to. I speak today for the kids who still sit in silence, for the girl hiding her notebooks under her bed, for the boy afraid to write his name on a poem. Don't ask us to edit our pain to fit your comfort. Don't invite our voices and then fear our truth. We are not here to make peace easy. We're here to make peace real. Step back from the mic and waited the response for 5 seconds. No one clapped. A quiet shift passed through the crowd. Some officials whispered, a few stared, and then someone stood and clapped, then another, then a few more, then the whole room, not loud, but long. Not for a performance, but for truth. After the speech backstage, a woman in a suit approached him quickly. You went off script, she said. Malik stayed calm. I told the truth. She looked at him closely and smiled, not wide, but respectful. Good. That's why we asked you. The wall appears 2 days later. Something unexpected happened. A group of online critics began to post. Malik is too political for a youth speaker. He's crossing lines. We shouldn't teach kids to question authority this way. News channels debated his message. Some praised him. Others called him divisive. Malik felt it all, like a wall he hadn't seen coming. They listened when I inspired. But now that I'm honest, they push back. Felt tired, not angry. Just tired. Reaching out, Algionda messaged him. Asterisk, I saw what they're saying. Keep going, you spoke for all of us. Asterisk, so did the Afghan girl. Now you understand what silence feels like on the world stage too. His father came to his room that night and said, they're testing your voice, but you don't need everyone's approval. You just need to stay true. Malik's reflection, Malik sat down and wrote something on a blank sheet. This isn't just about being heard. It's about being real, even when it's not easy. He pinned it next to his first ever quote, then turned on his mic and recorded. A new message for Echo. They'll cheer when you inspire. They'll push back when you challenge. But real truth? It echoes, even through the walls. The next morning, Malik woke up to a surprise. Echo's platform had crashed, not because of hate, but because so many students were logging on to upload their truths. Over 12,000. New voices. From 48 countries and counting. Malik read the notification out loud. System overload. Too many voices, all trying to be heard. He smiled. The world wasn't silent anymore. Malik sat frozen in front of his screen. Ecosystem overload. 12,000 plus stories uploaded in one night. The message blinked at the top of the page. He refreshed the site. More stories, more names, more voices. It wasn't about him anymore. It was something bigger now. Something real, something alive. The world. It's awake from villages in Kenya, 2 streets in New York. It's from war shelters in Ukraine to mountain towns in Peru. Kids were posting their stories. Some were only 2 sentences long. My mom told me to be quiet. I told her I can't anymore. I don't know what bravery is, but I wrote this anyway. No one believed me. I believed myself today. Some were poems, some were shaky voice notes with background noise, but every one of them echoed with truth, and the sound was too loud to be ignored. A call from the UN that evening. Malik received a video call from a woman named Alina, the head of the Global Youth Division at the UN. She was smiling wide. Malik, are you seeing this? Yes, he whispered. You started something. We've never seen this kind of engagement, and it's all organic. No hashtags, no ads, just truth. Malik asked quietly, What do we do now? Alina's eyes sparkled. We build something they can't shut down. The Youth Assembly within a week. Plans began for something new. The World Youth Truth Assembly, a digital gathering where kids would read their truths live from anywhere. In any language, Malik was chosen as the closing speaker, not because he was the most famous, but because he was the first to speak when no one clapped. This time, would not speak alone. School pushback begins. But not everyone liked what was happening. Some school districts around the world began blocking the echo platform. Others said the stories were too emotional, too personal, or too rebellious. Malik received messages from students. They blocked it here. We're scared to speak now. Our teacher told us to focus on real school, not feelings. The wall was back, but now thousands were on Malik's side of it. A plan, rise. Anyway, Malik wrote a simple post to all the Echo members. If they block the platform, record your stories anyway. Post them on walls, on notebooks, on t-shirts. If your school erases it, write it again. Truth doesn't go away. It finds another door, within hours. The hashtag write it anyway began to trend, even though Malik had never used hashtags before. Echo, in real life, Malik walked through his school hallway. He saw something new. A girl had printed her story and taped it to her locker. A shy boy was reading a short poem at the lunch table. A student in a wheelchair had written her truth on her backpack. Just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm weak. The movement wasn't online anymore. It had walked into the real world. The assembly begins the night of the World Youth. Truth Assembly finally came. More than 60 countries were represented. Thousands of live viewers. Some students wore uniforms. Some wore traditional clothes. Some were wrapped in flags. Every one of them came with one goal: to speak their truth. Stories that shook the world. A boy in Gaza shared a poem about hope. A girl in Sweden described how anxiety kept her silent for years. A teen in India read her story about being denied education for being a girl. Malik sat backstage and listened. He wasn't the hero here. They all were, and he was one of them. Malik's final speech, then it was time. Malik stepped onto the virtual stage. He looked into the camera. Behind him were the printed stories of students from dozens of countries, taped to the walls. He spoke gently. They laughed when I spoke. Then they listened. Then they pushed back. And now we rise. Not because one voice was loud, but because thousands whispered together, and it became a roar. They told us to keep it simple. But we are not simple. We are not broken. We are not dramatic. We are not dangerous. We are real, and we are not going away. He paused, then looked directly into the camera. You didn't just hear me. You became me. And now we are one voice, rising. The reaction this time, the silence didn't come. The chat exploded with, "Yes, I'm crying. He said what I couldn't. This is history." A journalist watching live tweeted, "I've never seen anything like this. The world's youth just gave the greatest speech I've heard in years together." After the storm later that night, Malik sat alone on his rooftop, legs crossed, notebook on his lap. He looked up at the stars. His dad joined him quietly. "Well?" Smiled. "It's not about me anymore." His dad smiled too. "No, but it started with you." Ending scene hook for final part 16. As Malik was about to head to bed, his phone buzzed. A short message appeared. From the Office of the President. Asterisk, we've been watching. We'd like to meet. Asterisk. Malik stared at the screen. One voice had echoed. Now, it had reached the highest room in the nation. It began with laughter, then a whisper, then a voice, then a wave, and now. Malik Walker stood at the gates of the White House, not as a visitor, not for a school field trip. He had been invited by the President of the United States, the same boy who once sat in the back of the class, was quietly saying, "My dad works at the Pentagon." The call before the meeting 2 days earlier. The president's staff had called Malik. "We've watched the youth assembly," they said. "The world is listening. So are we." Malik had hesitated. Why me? What do they want? Something that stuck in his mind. Sometimes they open the doors because they're ready to hear. Sometimes they open them to ask you to be quiet. Malik didn't know which one this was, but he knew one thing. He'd walk into the room the same way he walked into every other, honest, calm, and unafraid. Inside the White House, he wore no tie, no suit, just a neat button-up and the same worn notebook he had carried since the beginning. He was led down a long hallway, past paintings and guards, then through a large doorway, into the Oval Office. The president stood up and smiled. Malik Walker, the young man shaking the world. Malik nodded respectfully. "Thank you for having me." "The meeting begins." They sat down. An advisor, a press secretary, and a youth education officer joined. The president leaned forward. "Malik, the world is listening to young people like never before. You've done something no one else has done." Malik stayed quiet. The president continued. "We want to launch a new education initiative inspired by your work. We'd like you to help lead it." Officially, Malik blinked, then nodded slowly. But something in him waited. The quiet pressure, then came the second part. "Of course," said one of the advisors. "We'd want to make sure everything stays appropriate. And not too critical." Another added, "Focus more on hope, less on hurt. We don't want controversy, just inspiration." Malik's eyes lowered slightly. He had heard this before. Smile, but not too much. Speak, but not too loud. Be brave, as long as it doesn't bother anyone. A deep breath. The room went silent, waiting for his answer. Malik took out his notebook. He opened it to the very first page, his original sentence, scribbled months ago. They laughed. Then they listened. He looked up. "I didn't start this to be safe," he said softly. "I started this because I was tired of silence being the only option." The president leaned back, listening closely. Malik continued, "Kids don't need a safe version of truth. They need a true version of truth. I can help. Not if we erase the real pain just to make others feel better." The response to the room was still. Finally, the president nodded. "You've reminded us what leadership is." He looked at his staff. "He's in, but not just as a symbol. He helps design the entire program his way." Malik didn't smile. Big. He didn't cheer. He just nodded once. Because this wasn't about victory. This was about holding the truth. Steady even when the lights are the brightest. Walking out as Malik left the building, reporters called his name. "Malik, what did they offer you? Are you joining the government now?" Is it hard to speak truth in the Oval Office? He didn't stop. He didn't need to say anything. His story had already said enough back at home that night. Malik sat on the floor of his bedroom. His old speech papers were still in a box. He pulled out one. The very first one. The classroom assignment that started it all. "My dad works at the Pentagon." He smiled, then gently folded the paper and placed it next to a new document. National Youth Voices Initiative. First draft by Malik Walker, The Movement Lives. Anika was now in 100 countries. Thousands of schools had created truth corners. Spaces where students could speak freely. Young leaders were building mini echo centers in their cities. Kids who once said, "I'm not brave enough," now stood with microphones, because Malik had gone first. One last visit. Malik returned to his old school. The same classroom, same desk in the back corner. The teacher, now retired, had returned just to see him. She smiled and said, "Malik, you changed the world." He looked around the room, then said, "No, ma'am. The world was always ready, just needed one voice to begin." Final scene that evening, Malik stood on stage at a youth summit. This time he wasn't alone. He invited 5 students from different countries to stand beside him. Each read one line: "We are the quiet ones, the ones who were ignored, the ones who were told to wait, the ones who were told to smile and stay small." We spoke, and Malik stepped forward, and the world finally listened. Lights faded, applause thundered.